And you know that between 1:15 and 2 p.m., you are assured a great conversation with some of the best minds on the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Ado. So let me tell you a little about my guest today. Meanwhile, don't forget that we bring you a very special edition every last Tuesday of the month where we feature a very young leader and thinker doing great stuff. Quite often we think that people have to be, old and grey to have accomplished great things. But yes, there's some great young people who are doing awesome stuff at a very early age, and certainly are on their way to do even greater things. So my guest today is a multidisciplinary scholar and innovator, as well as a thinker, super passionate about applying leadership, education, and innovation and social entrepreneurship to solving the most daunting social, economic, and environmental challenges in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in Ghana and Africa. He obtained a Bachelor of Arts, first class honors from the University of Ghana. Then on to Columbia University, New York, where he graduated with a Master of Arts in Social Organization Psychology. And then an advanced postgraduate certificate in cooperation and conflict resolution from Columbia University's Morton Deutsch International Center for Cooperation and Conflict Resolution. He also holds a Master of Philosophy in Innovation, Strategy and Organization from the University of Cambridge Judge Business School in England. So he's also recently completed a Master of Design Studies in Risk and Resilience at Harvard University Graduate School of Design, where his research focused on the role of innovation, social entrepreneurship, and policymaking to solving environmental and social challenges. Certainly a man with a wealth of experience in strategy, advisory, and research roles in a number of countries, with some of the world's biggest organizations such as T-Mobile Telecommunications, the Better Business Bureau of the United States, the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Tata Group of Companies in India, Citigroup North America, the list goes on. In his leisure time, believe it or not, he enjoys reading inspirational books, watching soccer, meeting people from different cultures, mentoring young people, something he's very passionate about, and we will be exploring that in a moment, and volunteering for social causes. He does all of that and still manages to remain very, very, very scholarly. My guest today is Mr. Mac Saba. Good afternoon and welcome to the Executive Lounge back.
Good afternoon, Inshira.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I quite remember first time I heard about you, I was reading about a story that had been published, a Gazette story by Harvard University about, what you hoped to do with the studies you've had and the exposure and the experiences, and it's quite interesting. Social enterprises and social entrepreneurship seem to be, a new wave, from what used to be corporate social responsibility. Now you're seeing that organizations are beginning to do more sustainability units rather than a CSR unit. And you're also seeing that they're fully fledged social enterprises that are out there just to do business for good. Why is that such a big pull for you as a person, social enterprise?
Right. First of all, thanks for such an illustrious introduction. Sorry about the long list of qualifications here and there. I think they're pretty much evocative of the fact that I'm very passionate about the accumulation of knowledge. But before I get to the question, first of all, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you for the great work that you're doing, making sure that young people out there get information in regards to some of the challenges that business people face in this country, so that all of us, one way or the other, can contribute to the development of this country. And if I want to revert to your name, which is Inshira, and Yamin Shirao.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't know. I think when I was growing up, there was a church. There was a song that we usually sing in church, which goes, "Samin huri, samin kutu kutu." I don't even know how to celebrate you.
Well, super humbled.
Right.
I think that for us, the most important thing is to be able to have thought-leading conversations
Right.
for two reasons. One, to demonstrate that indeed we have some of the best minds in the country doing good things here and around the world. And secondly, that everyone is a cousin of another.
Right.
And
Right.
that should inspire us to, aspire to do great things and also believe in ourselves that we can do great things. And we
Right.
need to start telling our own story. So I'm not going to wait for somebody else to start telling the story of Maxaba. We need to tell that story here. We need to be able to get young people acquainted with the idea that they can also be passionate about something and go after it and do a good job.
Right.
So welcome once again to the
Thank you
Executive
very
Club.
much.
Help me, for our audience and also for my own benefit, why is social enterprise different from the concept of corporate social responsibility?
Right. Thank you very much for such for the question. To begin with, I'd like to thank our audience, who I believe have taken time out of their busy schedules to listen to us. I think it speaks volumes about the degree to which all of us, one way or the other, have a stake in the development of this country. And now back to the question in regards to social entrepreneurship being a buzzword, one of the predominant ethos within development at the moment. I would like to first of all revert to what has been the dogma within the development arena, within the literature, within practice. I think for far too long, all of us know that the West, in its dealings with Africa, has been predominantly through the conduit of aid. And if you're familiar with the historiography and also this scholarly articles that have been written over the years and even books, a scholar by name Dambisa Moyo, William Esterly, and more recently Darren Asimoglu in his seminal work.
Is it Why Economies or Why Countries Fail?
Why Nations Fail.
Why Nations Fail.
Why
that's
Nations
right,
Fail.
yes. Good read, that one.
Right. Many of them believe that the aid approach, and you know as well as I do that if you take a walk around Accra or even venture a little bit into the rural areas in Ghana, it's fair to say that in as much as the aid approach has helped us to some extent, it hasn't been fully been able to help us extricate ourselves from the shackles of poverty, which for far too long has bedeviled not only our citizens, but also many other aspects of our lives. And so when you begin to think about that very deeply, the prevailing argument or new modes of thinking have been along the lines of it's important that we begin to think about how we can innovate, ideate around many of the issues that we face in our countries. And in 2016, the Sustainable Development Goals were signed into action.
That's right.
All the 17 goals that we have a very, very, I would say, an ambitious goal of achieving by the year 2030. 17 goals, all of them mired within the context of social, environmental, and many of the economic development issues that we have. Now, when you juxtapose that within the context of aid, it's almost impossible to believe that aid alone can lead to solving these issues. Sure. And that's the more reason why social entrepreneurship, which I believe is grounded within the context of co-creation, sort of bringing the people that you're trying to solve the problem for into the fold, allowing young people in this country to not only see many of the challenges and problems that we face in the country as problems, but also opportunities that if they came up with solutions to, all of us, and I mean all of us collectively, can begin to lift our country from the quagmire of development, underdevelopment, which for far too long has been a millstone around our necks. And that is the very reason why I believe social entrepreneurship, which is very distinct from your quintessential entrepreneurship, which prides itself on profit making. Social entrepreneurship, on the other hand, places a premium on social value creation.
Right.
So at the outset, money making is not the predominant goal. That being the case, over the long haul, there is the likelihood that the person could end up making a lot of money out of it. But the person's anger, apathy, and all the frustrations that people experience in this country are pretty much tailored to how do I, over the long pool, play a role, a pivotal role that is, in helping extricate Ghana from the shackles of social and environmental problems. A critical case in point.
Yeah.
I think a couple of decades ago, you would agree with me that if you were driving along the Kolegono on the way to Kolebu, it was filthy.
Yeah.
If a visitor, someone was coming to Ghana and saw that, that wouldn't be the best of sight. It wouldn't put Ghana in the best of light. And then you have a person the caliber of Dr. Sian Japon who comes in and comes up with a solution, a waste management solution, a monumental scale, and begins to solve many of these issues. Not only that, when you think about the domino effect of that, cascading into job creation, finding solutions to sanitation problems, and many others, when you think about that individual and a critical mass of that, think about over the long haul what we could do for this country. And that's why I believe that social entrepreneurship, being extremely focused on creating social value, being distinct from the predominant ethos within entrepreneurship, which prides itself on profit making, would be the way, in complementary to the AID approach, which for far too long hasn't been a boon in helping us free ourselves from the prison of poverty and underdevelopment.
So to a large extent, social responsibility is more a reactive approach to offering social good, whereas social enterprise is actually more proactive approach to making sure that the business uses commercial underpinnings of running business, but is meant to create good for the society.
That's one school of thought.
Okay.
The other school of thought is the fact that social entrepreneurship, social responsibility emanates from the need, a social need of organizations, business or otherwise, to begin to attend to the needs of the communities they face. One could make a compelling argument that it might not be as a result of them actually wanting to do it. But if you look at institutional theory, for instance, you could argue that actors in actors in a system begin to behave like each other. So if you are, say, Joy FM, and then you begin to donate money to people around, and then the other stations begin to follow suit, the other people would be compelled to do that. It might not necessarily mean that they want to do it, but as a result of the pressures within the environment, they're compelled to do that.
So what would have started as a byproduct of a certain action that we have taken becomes the starting point for another.
Right.
So we may have been reactive with what we started, and somewhere along the line, someone might decide that their social responsibility will now be more of a proactive approach, but it would have been triggered by what someone else had done.
It's sort of coercive. So, I mean, you could argue from the standpoint that it's coercive and also mimetic, in the sense that you're beginning to mimic many of the actors in the space in which you operate. And because there's a predominant behavior, and if you're the anomaly, then people begin to castigate you. And because you don't want to fall into that category, you then begin to behave likewise.
That's right. Okay, fantastic stuff. So I like the explanation, because I think quite often one of the things that you see happening around us is that people jump into things. The buzzword has been entrepreneurship for a very long time. And lately you're hearing about people also saying they want to do social entrepreneurship, or they're starting social enterprises. And while it may present a great opportunity, there's a need for us to approach it with a lot of clarity, so that people, if you're a for-profit person, you don't go and end up in a not-for-profit space and get frustrated. In the meantime, it's 30 minutes past 1300 hours, so 1:30, and you can join us by sending your thoughts if you have any questions for my guest Max Abba, who is a super talented man, a multidisciplinary scholar. He's an innovator, thinker, and a social entrepreneur, and has a passion for youth empowerment and employment. We'll be exploring that in a moment. The numbers you can use for both WhatsApp and Telegram is 0244 340 437. It would be nice to hear some of your thoughts. I like the fact that you contextualized your definition of what social entrepreneurship is, or social enterprises are, against the backdrop of our own economic development,
right,
and that evolution. We've been labeled as a low middle income country, but we're still quite heavily dependent on aid.
Right.
We have quite an alarming youth unemployment challenge on our hands, albeit that there has been a number of interventions by governments, including the current administration.
Right.
But like you said, nothing of a groundbreaking effect has been seen from these things. I may be preemptive in asking that, in your opinion, would social entrepreneurship be something that can add to the panacea in fixing this problem? And what form do you think that will take?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the youth unemployment problem, has bedeviled the African continent for far too long, and Ghana is just pretty much a microcosm of that. Now, I did some research not very long ago into the gravity of the issue in Ghana, and in 2017, for instance, about 300,000 people supposedly graduated from universities in the country, and only about 10% of those were able to secure jobs within the first year of graduation.
Wow.
So you have, if you put that in context, about 30,000 graduates being able to secure jobs within the first year of graduation. So an astonishing 270,000 students sometimes have to go for as long as 3 years and 4 years and 5 years and 6 years. And when you think about that in the grand scheme over the long pool, what that means for this country, I mean, all of us can sit here and think that we're not affected by it. But that is the fate of a lot of young people in this country. Now, imagine growing up in some village in Ghana, for instance, right? Your parents tell you about the value of education. They tell you to work hard. They sell you the myth of the fact that an education will help free you from the prison of poverty. So you listened. You went to school. You
and
worked
gave it
hard.
all your best, huh?
You graduate only to realize that the job, the education was supposed to help you get, doesn't exist. Your dreams are completely crushed. This is the fate of many young people in this country.
Right.
Now, it's important to unpack youth unemployment, because when you think about it, the causes of it are very multidimensional.
Okay.
You could argue for that from the standpoint of policy inefficiencies over a very long period of time contributing to that, and then an excessive bent on producing more graduates than there are jobs for the job market. And some of it could also be from the education system, where there's certainly a mismatch between the skills young people get in schools and what the needs of the job market are. And you could also see that we do not, one way or the other, equip young people with the innovation and entrepreneurship skills they need to be able to believe that they could be on their own. I think it's important that that hopelessness is sort of turned into a kind of self-efficacy, so that a critical mass of young people in this country would begin to know that, look, if you left your fate to the device of government alone, you're heading for trouble. And that while in school, it's important that you begin to think about, how do I as an individual begin to look at many of the issues in this country, not only as challenges, but as opportunities that if I found a solution to, I would not only be creating a job for myself, but I may end up over the long pool employing other people as well. Like on my way here, for instance, I saw a gentleman who was sort of urinating on the streets. And then I thought about it. I'm like, okay, it's fairly easy to say that this person isn't necessarily worried about how people see him, or the sort of like things he might be doing in public. When you think about it, it just means that there's probably no lavatory in the area. There's no bathroom, right? And so a person can say that, okay, I'm going to take on the role of changing behaviors, beginning to change attitudinal problems, right? And how do we do that? So when I say social entrepreneurship, I want young people in this country to begin to think that they have the self-efficacy, the apathy, the anger can all be channeled into seeing many of the challenges that we face, the social, environmental challenges that we face in this country, as opportunities that if they found solutions to, then together we will be finding solutions to the problems that our country and our continent faces. Because think about the projections over the long pool. By 2035, Africa would have about 1 billion young people in the workforce. Now, if you look at sort of the gory...
80% of the global demographic that can enter employment will be resident on this continent.
On this continent. And then think about that. When you see the gory pictures of young people on rickety boats trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe, they're dying over there. Our brothers and sisters are being burned like animals, basically.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, if you follow the historiography, it's never happened that you've had so many people that are so despondent, so despair, whose hopes they've lost hopes in the country, and their leaders, and many other things. Now these people, as these are energies that are just waiting. People, I mean, it's been referred to as a time bomb. So when you, aside from that mass migration, think about violence, which is beginning to happen already. Young people resorting to sort of machinations on the internet and things of the sort. These are all sort of the byproducts of many of the frustrations and challenges young people in the country are facing. And government alone can't do it, because governments in and of themselves are supposed to create enabling environments for the private sector to flourish. But it's only in this part of the world that we're completely reliant on governments to create jobs. And they can't do that. So we're sitting on a time bomb that if we don't take action over the long pull, I must say that it looks kind of apocalyptic. I don't want to sound like a prophet of doom, but I'm really worried.
Well, I mean, it's either an opportunity or a threat. And it's up to us to harness the demographic dividend to the benefit of our development, lift more and more people out of poverty, and give them a chance to truly express themselves and put out their full potential. I like that you talked about the coming demographic dividend. How will what do you think the future of social enterprise would be? Enyo has sent us a message and says, how is social entrepreneurship funded? And this is always a big question that a lot of people ask for. If you're going to fix something, it's still going to take money to fix it. If you're going to start a business for profit, you still need funds to kick it off. What's the funding model for social entrepreneurship today, and how do you see that evolving over the years?
Right. I mean, from my experiences in the United States, you have venture capitalists, venture philanthropists who play pivotal roles in that. You have innovation labs, especially at my university, for instance. There are competitions that are held for young people to be able to pitch their ideas, to see the efficacy of those ideas at scale, being able to positively impact the life of a lot of people. Now, I think there are a couple of drawbacks in our culture, because people here, I think it's a very fledgling industry, to be honest. And you need players all coming together, what I call an ecosystem. So you have different actors, different stakeholders who would come together and work assiduously at making sure that young people are able to flourish. Not only the education component, but funding and getting mentorship, regulations. How long does it take to register a business, for instance, right? So all these bureaucratic and administrative bottlenecks that have gotten in the way of young people being able to pursue some of these things also need to be gotten rid of, or government needs to make sure that they're able to ameliorate that so that the playing field will be sort of leveled for them. Take a person like Will Senyo, for instance, who is the founder of Impact Hub.
Impact Hub, yes.
Right. That is a very seminal invention, to be honest, because that individual is sort of a connector in that space, right? So you need those kinds of environments where people are able to come together. They feed off the energies of each other. They tell each other stories of their frustrations and the difficulties they go through in their entrepreneurial journeys, right? But we also need the private sector to come in, banks in Ghana, to be able to fund a lot of young people with ideas. Because not only do you need the idea, your hands need to be held so that you can be taken along the path to making sure that you go from ideation to market. But there's been a paucity of that. And when you look at that broadly, there's so many what I call institutional voids. What prevents the customer, the producer, from meeting the buyer? Or what prevents banks from being able to effectively evaluate the validity, the viability of an individual's business to go to market and be successful? So we don't have effective credit rating systems. And so that's also an opportunity for people to come in and say that, okay, we're going to make sure that we create the mechanism that allows banks to more effectively be able to evaluate young people.
Which is actually underway.
Right.
I think the
Megan McCormick, I know of an individual.
DMB are here, offering that service. I think that there's also the Ghana, I think it's like a reference bureau, a credit reference bureau, a registry for collateral and things like that. So there's a move in that direction.
Right.
But I guess what's critical is how can we bring it to scale?
Right.
Considering the opportunity that stares us in the face.
Right.
I think that you know, as we look further afield, I think the World Economic Forum a few years ago said that the number of jobs that exist today won't be here again.
Right.
We also have this situation compounded with an educational system that probably is yet to catch up with what the world will need tomorrow.
Right.
So, and then we also have a third factor, which is the growing bulge of young people
right.
over the next 15 years plus.
Right.
That mixed together may sound like a powder keg, waiting to go off. But again, you choose to look at things as threats or opportunities.
Right.
So if we chose to look at this as an opportunity, all things being equal, government has done its bit to create the playing field.
Right.
How does somebody listening to us now,
Right.
A young person who wants to see this nation do better, find that rock star in them
Right.
to become a social entrepreneur?
Right.
What
right.
things should we be looking for?
As and earlier in our conversation, I talked about a kind of learned helplessness,
Mm-hmm.
where people don't believe that they have the self-efficacy. I want to call it self-efficacy, the wherewithal, the ability within you. Now, let me ground that within the context of my story, for instance, coming from absolute obscurity.
Yeah.
Growing up in Yeji, where there was no running water, studying with kerosene lanterns. I guess, for lack of a better word, or you couldn't even describe that in English. It's called bobo.
I know. Yeah.
Right. So,
it's a lantern.
Right.
It does what a lantern does.
right, it does. But I mean, I think because we have no English name for it, bobo.
Yeah.
You understand? Now, to be able to emerge out of that place took a great deal of alacrity and an extreme belief in your ability to rise from such humble beginnings. I remember from there going to Adidoma Secondary School. We didn't have enough teachers. We didn't have enough books. We didn't have enough classrooms. And I think it was just by dint of hard work and the sheer grace of God that I was able to emerge out of there as one of the very few people to go to the University of Ghana. I remember when I arrived at the University of Ghana, it was my first time in the city. Wow. And people would often call me one-man union because I was like one of the very few from my school. Now, I think what I want young people to be able to subscribe to, I want them to marry the idea that if they left everything to the device of government alone, it's totally beyond the jurisdiction of government. They in turn need to be able to believe that, look, we need to take action, collective action. All of us have a stake. And the time to do that is not going to be, it wasn't yesterday. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's today.
Right now.
Because if we don't, then a lot of young people are just going to wallow in absolute melancholy, and that's just not very nice. I mean, in 2016, when my father passed away, I came to Ghana, and after my father was buried, I had the unique opportunity to meet some of my friends from growing up, and many of them were facing one challenge or the other, a lot of it being unemployment. And I remember one guy, let's say hypothetically, Kofi, for instance, and I sort of volunteered to teach in my hometown, Mape, in the Volta region, about 45 minutes away from here. And I remember growing up, all of us would tell each other stories of sort of the grand visions we had and how we wanted to go to university and all of that. And so by the age of 10, I think his father passed away, but his mom had worked assiduously, making sure that he had gotten the opportunity to go to Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He graduated and he can't get a job. Now, I don't want to what I want to believe is that, what if I hadn't won sort of the green card lottery when I was in my third year at the university and emigrated to the United States? Maybe I too will be wallowing in the doldrums of unemployment. And that's the more reason why I think I've had a passion, that vigor, that somehow that's the way that I can play a role. Because I've always been very, very passionate about education. And so to emerge out of where I came from, I think it behooves me. The honors lies on me to play a role. And not only me, but I think you as well, the trotro driver, the politician, the teacher, all of us have a stake in making sure that we lift Ghana, our beloved country, from the doldrums of underdevelopment to the pinnacle of international recognition. And I think we're on the way.
Fantastic stuff. It's 46 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Ado. My guest is Max Saba. He is a social entrepreneur. He is a man who is very passionate about youth unemployment, or rather youth empowerment leading to employment. You can join us with your own thoughts on WhatsApp at 0244340437. Same number for Telegram. And if you want to give us a shout by telephone at 0244340437 or 0302216541. Joseph from Ajiman Joseph, Community 9 Tema, says, okay, well, your guess is making a lot of sense, but my question is, how can businesses be improved in this country? I guess you've pointed to some of these things earlier, that if we can start improving the little things that make the ease of doing business, improve those things, it will help. But what I would like to find out at this point really is, so, young man, I have seen that there is a potential to give back to society.
Right.
One of the big we all can believe in transformation,
Right.
which is a good thing.
Right.
But how do I go from dealing with my bread and butter, which is keeping my own body and soul together,
Right.
keeping a shirt on my back, a roof over my head, and some food on the table, to be able to start believing that in spite of my own lack, I could impact the wider generation? I hope you get the concept that you kind of can't give what you don't have, so you need to have amassed enough to be able to give some away.
Right.
It's that something that prevails in, or is a stumbling block to social enterprises or entrepreneurs, or is there a way around things like that?
Right. I mean, that's a great question, because you need to be able to sustain your livelihood. If not, then physiologically you're not going to be ready for it. That's a very interesting question. But I think all of us have a stake in that, know. I don't think that, I think we couldn't leave that to the device of that individual alone. And that's why I talk about an ecosystem. Now, this is a conversation for all of us. How can government play a role? How can sort of the educational institutions play a role? How can financial institutions play a role? How do we create an enabling environment, a sort of social safety net that allows young people to be able to think about how they can be solving some of these issues while also they need the bread and butter? Because you can't, if you're hungry, then you're not able to think also, right? You're not able to think about, okay, like, I want to take my business to market, because you need to be able to feed not only yourself, but if you ground that within the context of the collectivistic ethos of the Ghanaian, you have your cousins, your nephews, your brothers, all wanting you to help. So there's so much pressure on a lot of young people. So I think all of us need to have conversations about how do we create safety nets that allow young people, while they're in school or when they've graduated, so that they can be able to feed themselves while they think about how to take their ideas to market, how to ideate, how to prototype, and all of that, because that's a very fair point. Because if you're hungry, then perhaps entrepreneurship is not on your radar. Perhaps you're thinking about, I'm going to get that job, and you show up at an interview and there's 500 people, like 5 a.m. in the morning. So these are very complex issues, and I think it's important that we decode each of them, because they're very multidimensional.
Yeah.
And that's how social problems are. There's so many contributors to them that if you want to solve them, then you need to be able to pull each part of those apart and see where this person can contribute. And that's why we need multidisciplinary teams. The architect has a role to play, the engineer, the banker. You have a role to play, all of us, And so, and that's, for me, I think that's one of the reasons why when I take a complex issue, a complex challenge as a social or environmental problem, I like to be able to zero in on the component of it that I think I can play a role. Like, for instance, when I look at youth unemployment as a whole, the part that I think I can play a role is education. Be that making sure that young people are getting the innovation and entrepreneurship education they need. Another person might have to take the mantle of leadership in providing the funding.
Okay.
Another person might say, okay, I'm going to provide a social safety net for them while they're in the process of ideating and taking their businesses to market. So it's a very complex issue, and I wish I had it.
But if everyone played a role, right, so that there is lots of seats at the table,
right,
and that we all need to step up,
right,
and support,
right.
But whose responsibility would it be to craft the overall vision? If, for example, we say by 2035,
Right.
I don't know how much of that, 1 billion will be resident in this country.
Right.
But of course, if we're looking at a continental, a shift on the continent where we're trading more and more amongst each other and the barriers or borders are being flattened, it means that whether we like it or not, there's 1 billion people on this continent.
Right.
And they can impact on any region or specific country.
Right.
How do we set the agenda today
Right.
in 2019 and say, come 2035, 16 years from now,
Right.
we are ready with a plan.
Right.
And that plan is put in motion now.
Right.
So come 2035, we have built a new mindset.
Right.
That we all understand that we have a responsibility. We all have a role to play. And we're not only looking to government alone to do A, B, and C. How do we get that critical first steps, going?
Right. I mean, we certainly need to provide young people the scaffolding for entrepreneurship. And I think if you look at it from the standpoint of the Sustainable Development Goals, which pretty much cascade to each individual country, I mean, I think it's important to look at it within the context of Ghana. As you mentioned, Ghana is pretty much a microcosm of many of the developing countries in the global south. And so I think we need a concerted effort, not only from government, but different stakeholders. All of us need to sit down and say, look, if we want to make sure that we solve youth unemployment by 50% by this date, we need action, we need plan A, B, C, and action X, Y, Z. Because if we left it to chance, it wouldn't happen. I think we need a policy, a kind of policy that allows all of us to contribute our quotas. Not only the government, but also financial institutions, but also educational institutions, research centers, all of us playing central roles and taking it upon ourselves, believing that, look, if we give it our all of us, one way or the other, could help, if not solve it, make a dent. Because I think we need a policy, a kind of policy around that. I'm not sure if that's in existence, but that's what I feel we need. And I'm ready to play a role in that. Because we need to think about, it's fairly easy for me to come here and say, look, I just graduated from Harvard and I want to play a role in solving youth unemployment. But that would be a sort of top down. What I actually believe is that we need collective action. And that for all you know, the solution doesn't lie on Harvard campus. The solution lies right here. Because this is where the problem is. You have to feel the people, go and spend time with them, take the trotro, the frustrations they go through, so that all of us collectively can begin to ideate, can begin to come up with ideas about how we solve them. Because there's so many components, as you know, and we need to nip each of those in the bud. And that'll require the expertise, the talents, the education, the work of different segments of our economy.
Wow. Mac, fantastic stuff. We only have very little time on this conversation, but I think I'm going to have to grab you and have another conversation with you. Bafor Ntema, a youth advocate and a media practitioner, would like to meet with you and share some few ideas. Is there a okay? So
share my social media
giving a contact here, but what's your social media handle if they want to reach out to you?
Mac.Saba.
Okay.
Mac.Saba on Instagram.
On Instagram, yeah.
Mac Saba on Twitter. Mac Saba on Facebook.
Okay, so it's Mac Saba, Facebook and Twitter, and it's Mac.Saba. It's mac.sarbah.
On Instagram.
Reach out. That's on Instagram, but there's no dot for Facebook and for Twitter. So we're wrapping this up. I think for me, 5 takeouts from this conversation, and then I will go to some comments. In fact, let's do the comments first. Oh, great. Okay, so Stephen Boydie says he's loving the video stream, steady and uninterrupted. Great conversation as always. Thank you for listening. And George Ofori says, Mac, you're fantastic. It's Believe. And someone says, I'm listening live from the penthouse in Mepe. That's your
that's my hometown,
yeah?
yes.
And then,
tell the person don't blush it all.
Okay, I'm sure they can hear you. And that's Felix Aiku Green Street. And Ajan Noble says he's listening from Abekopa. And quite a number of comments here. Okay, someone says we're using too many big industrious English. And Benjamin Tertis is a nice conversation. Absolutely enjoying it. Maxaba, I admire your profundity. And yeah, that's great. In fact, here's what I'm taking away from all of that profundity that you have heard today. For me, is that you've got to be deliberate about what you want.
Right.
Go after it. Number two is that you must remain consistent. It's not going to be easy.
Right.
But once you have that vision and you consistently work towards it,
Right.
eventually you'll get there. The importance of community, that no one man can do it all by himself.
Right.
And then you must be driven by compassion. That, if your lot is a little better than someone else's, you should aspire to see them do better than they are at the moment as well. And then the final thing for me is that never stop adding new knowledge.
Right.
And that for me is the 5 things I'm taking away from this conversation.
Without a doubt. Before you go, I'd like to add sort of a quote by Samuel Beckett, sort of trying to just encourage young people out there that in the process of doing that, you're going to fail. But do not let failure get in the way of your ability to believe that you too can play a pivotal role in solving many of the issues that we have. And it goes, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, feel better.
Thank you very much, Maxaba. And this is what I leave the audience with today. It's always one song that I like, and I think you'd enjoy this one too. It's Manifest from their Pi album, and he featured Obrafo on this one. No Shortcut to Heaven. Up next is the headline news at 2, and then Lexus Bill comes your way with the award-winning Drive Time on Joy, your best late afternoon radio program. See you again next time. Go forward, make rain. Shalom.